and I'm singing along to the music, and the music is teaching me the game of cocaine. It's teaching me the game of gangs and violence and drugs and parties in Vegas and Miami. And like, we're just singing along. But what we don't realize as our youth is that our words mean something. Our words are powerful. God gives us the ability to come through with that. And at the end of the day, as we speak good or bad, those things come to light in our life. Mm-hmm. And I realized that in the cell, that everything that I was singing is what I ended up living.
Welcome to another episode of Liberating Humanity. I'm Paul Hutchinson, your host, and I'm incredibly excited today for our guest. Our guest has been in the darkness in some really difficult times, and instead of letting that darkness and those difficult times define him, he's decided to turn it around and teach the world how to live in a place of faith. His foundation, his group is called Forever Faith. He speaks to large groups of entrepreneurs, to children. He speaks with, he's a keynote speaker with a lot of people in professional sports as well. So I'm super excited today to welcome our guest, Abe Cruz.
Thank you so much, Paul. I greatly appreciate the opportunity. It's a blessing. Thank you.
Where did we first meet? We met
in Colombia.
That's right.
Yes,
it was
yes.
Colombia.
So we met in Colombia, in Medellin. A mutual friend, George, through the Fitness Expo world. He had connected us, and it was a surprise. He had called me and said, "Hey, you got to connect with Paul. He's in Medellin. He's speaking at an event." And when he said that, I obviously canceled everything and said, "I need to go and meet you."
Well, I'm telling you what, I canceled things today to spend time with you because I looked into your story and I thought, this is what liberating humanity is all about. So many people live their lives in oh, poor little old me, this happened to me when I was a kid, or this happened, I made these choices and my whole life I have to carry that with me. And you've done the opposite. You have gone out and created so much inspiration and because of the challenges that you had in your youth.
Right. Yeah. A lot of people have that poverty mentality, the victim mentality. And, at the end of the day, we can cry about our mistakes and I encourage it. Go ahead and cry about it, but then take responsibility, take accountability, own up to it. And now let's work on a solution. Let's fix it. Let's become a better human being, a better person. My success, I give it all to God. I ask God for the direction now. And that's something that I didn't do when I was younger, so we become more mature, we understand life a little bit, and God is our solution always.
I 100% believe that, and I try to not push any specific religion on the group, but it is vitally important that everybody connects with their Creator, connects with God.
Amen.
And that's really the solution. I'm writing a book called Are You Listening? With my hand on my heart. Not are you listening here, but are you listening here? Because I truly believe that the answer to eradicating child trafficking, the answer to stopping domestic abuse and domestic violence, the answer to stopping wars and just all this division, the answer is learning to listen to that still small voice of truth, to connect with God.
Absolutely.
Because all of us have fallen short.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's none of us are perfect. There's one perfect dude, and that ain't me. That wasn't you, right? And so we all have room to improve. And I tell people that everything of our past, everything that has happened to us, and everything that we have done, all of it can be washed clean. 100% purely washed clean. They're both going to require the help of God to do so. But we can completely cleanse ourselves from the things that happened to us and the things that we did to other people that were out of integrity. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, that's something that we learn along the difficulties of life, and so much shame and culture pushes so much chaos into our brains that we're brainwashed, we're influenced into thinking what is actually not true. Our mind is our best friend or our worst enemy. and that becomes a challenge. So, I mean, that's life.
Well, let's go back to the beginning.
Sure.
I know that there's so much value in having a healthy nuclear family, but unfortunately, a lot of people don't have that in their youth. So
Yeah.
What happened in your childhood, and what did your family life look like, and where did that lead you?
Great question. And like many millions of people, I was born in East LA, California, Los Angeles, East LA, the hood, Los Barrios. I'm Mexican Cuban. And unfortunately, my father left when I was 4 years old. So my mom raised 3 kids in a 1-bedroom apartment. We all shared a room. My mom would sleep in the living room on the floor. I remember, I still talk about it in my book. I talk about picking cockroaches out of my cereal. You go hungry for a while, and then your mom says, well, you're not going to die. Just go ahead, take it out of the cereal, continue to eat. And that became normal. I remember my mom was working 3 jobs to be able to provide for us. And, I remember having to take a piece of bread, put it on the stove, put some butter on it, and that was our meal 2 times a day. And it became normal in life, but yet I was grateful. So we grew up in that kind of a direction, single mother, 1-bedroom apartment. And sports was really my ultimate blessing. Sports allowed me to meet other men because my father was not present in our life. And still to this day, I don't know my father. And that's a whole nother topic, but I'm not upset with my father. I'm not hurt with him. And now that I'm a grown man, I have a son. I understand that life is difficult. I don't know this backstory with my mom and him, but it's obvious that there was some tension, some issues that happened. I'm not here to judge anyone. God will take that and deal with it. So I hope he's doing well. I don't know much about him, but going into sports allowed me to meet other men, other mentors, father figures that were my coaches in basketball and football. And sports really was a huge blessing for me. So, I think.
Did you get pretty good? I mean, were you on the high school team and going for college, or?
Actually, yes. I flourished. Sports, I was really, because that's all I could do. I mean, in those days, there was no internet and video games or phones. So I was training by 11 years old. I was already doing, 100 push-ups, consecutive pull-ups, 1,000 abs a day. By the time I was 11, my first flag football at that time, and tackle. I mean, I was all-star. I won a CIF championship in high school, varsity basketball as a true freshman. I got to play against Baron Davis, who, played in the NBA. I played with a bunch of the NBA guys. I ended up was an all-star, all-state, all-American football player, basketball player, played 4 sports in high school, went on to college, played football and basketball, won another conference championship at the University of Wisconsin-Stout. As an athlete, I say this because it's the truth, but I have probably a 95% winning record.
Wow.
From the time I was 11 to 20 years old, I probably didn't lose more than 15 games out of hundreds.
So what do you think, and this is more of a mindset thing that you've carried with you your whole life. What differentiated you between the other kids who grew up without a dad, who used that as an excuse for not doing things with their life? I mean, what was the difference in your mindset, do you think?
Having to recap all the years, not having a father, and I just remember my mom. And my mom was a religious woman. My mom always said, thank God for your life. Thank God for giving you the talents and some of your skill sets. Be appreciative of it and utilize them, maximize them. Go ahead and showcase the gifts that the Lord has given you. So the mindset of not having anything pushed me to want to everything. So I was a workaholic, and I still am a workaholic at this point. I just have realized how to control it in a positive manner. But sports is simple. Get up early, train, run, push-ups, pull-ups, shoot the basketball, do your sprints, volleyball, drills, whatever it is. It's just hard work, dedication, and sacrifice. And that's the formula to the world in any field that we get into, really, is a sacrifice, I think, is the biggest potential, because kids at 11 and 12 years old, they want to play video games, or they want to hang out and eat ice cream cones, and only the ones that make it to the next level are training and focused on that. So
Absolutely.
discipline, sacrifice, yeah.
Well, we're getting into the story of it, but at some point in your life, you end up sitting in front of a judge and being given 10 years in prison.
It was a 35-year prison sentence.
35-year prison sentence.
Sentence that's split 10 in and 25 out. So right now in this in this together with you, I'm still currently on probation.
Wow.
For 25 years on paper. But again, the Lord has erased all of the stereotypical laws and limits. I travel in and out of the country. I don't have to check in anymore. And I say that humbly and gratefully, but I've been working hard and I don't have to. The rules have been adjusted so I can continue to live a peaceful, godly life.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, I want to get into the details of that because, there's so many of our listeners look back on their life and they identify things as excuses. My father left when I was 4, and that's why I didn't do anything with my life, or my wife left me, or my husband cheated on me, or my son did this, whatever, or, I ended up not getting good grades in school. I couldn't go to college, and this is my excuse. And when I was in, it was my early 20s, I had a license plate on my car that said "No excuses," NOXQSES, right? That's what it was, and I because I realized that was the enemy to my own successes. An excuse is simply blaming somebody else, something else for our inability to move forward. So some things happened. You were doing well financially, and then all of a sudden,
I have to share this with you because you said no excuses in your license plate. So I ended up doing a photo shoot after I got out of prison. We'll get into that. I'll backtrack, but I have to share this part. I ended up doing a photo shoot a few years ago, and it was for a big magazine. And the magazine, I did a reenactment of me in prison, wearing a tank top and orange prison clothes. And the title of it said, "No shoes, no gym, no excuses."
Love that.
And it was that there was no excuses. We still can train. We still can do what we need to do. In prison, I worked out with water bags and plunger sticks for the toilet. I took off the plunger stick, utilized the bars, and then used my shirt and water bags, rolled them up, and we trained. I had up to 100 pounds of water that we were curling.
Wow.
So no excuses, I agree with it.
Wow.
I had to share that. But looking back at everything, as I stated, I went off to play college. My freshman year in college, I went to the University of Wisconsin-Stout, played football there. We ended up going, I think either 14-2 or 15-1. I think it was 1. I think we went 14-1. We lost in the second or the third round of the conference playoffs, and we lost to the team that ended up winning the national championship in the division. And I started as a true freshman, went both ways, offense and defense, had a great season. I went home for the summer real quick to visit my mom and family, and when I came back to LA, I saw a bunch of 19 and 20 and 21-year-olds driving Ferraris and Lamborghinis and Bentleys, and I said, what's going on here? I was in college struggling, eating top ramen noodles and cutting hair for $10 a head so I could make some money in college. And when I went back, I saw this, and a lot of the people I knew from high school, and I said, what are you guys doing? How is this possible? So that's when I was introduced to the world of network marketing. And I got introduced to a company that was called 2x2.net, network marketing. This was the very beginning, and this was in 2000, probably 2002, 2003. They were predicting $1 trillion of online sales in the future. They probably knew Bezos and those guys because they already knew the future. We were stating this in 2001, 2002, 2003, that the e-commerce world was coming. At this time, there was nothing happening. So we were selling that along with internet because Google was barely around, and we were selling 2x2.net internet. I didn't know anything about network marketing. I didn't know anything about products. I just knew, and I was taught to recruit. I was taught, bring in people, sign up, have them get their credit card, and you're making money. I learned the sales side of the business, and And while I was there at home on vacation for like 7 days, I made $49. And it was the first money that I had ever made myself in my life. So to me, I was like, all right, this works. Like these guys are making $100,000 a week or a month. This is the beginning stages. And I knew that from sports. You got to build, and you have hell week and off seasons and playoffs, and it's a process. So I made my first $49. I went back to college to get ready for Hell Week again for the next following season, my sophomore year. But this time I came back a little different. I was taught dress for success. I was taught when you meet someone important or successful, don't talk too much. Ask 2 questions. What is it that you do, and will you teach me how to do it? So I learned these basic rules of business. I flew back to Wisconsin as a college athlete in a suit and tie and a briefcase, not as a college athlete with a backward hat and earrings and that kind of stereotypical athlete. And I flew back. My lineman picked me up in a big old country truck from Wisconsin, and everybody's like, Cruz, what are you like? Who's the new Cruz? They called me Cruz. Well, they called me Hollywood, because I had highlights and earrings my freshman year. My sophomore year, I came back completely different. Within the first 60 days, we already had 200 people involved in the network marketing, and that exploded. And this is where I started getting into leadership. I was studying Jim Rohn and John C. Maxwell and Les Brown and those guys. Eric Thomas wasn't even around then. So I started to self-educate myself. I was in college working on a business degree in psychology, and falling asleep in class. I was just tired from training football and then doing late night network marketing events or trainings and classes. So within my first 6 months, I made my first $100,000 in college. And then I started asking the teachers, how much money do you make? And what is this? I didn't even know what was happening. Things just started to roll so fast. And then I started to learn more about business and money and the economics and how things were working. And long story short is my upline, my leaders, pretty much convinced me to drop out of college. Right. They said, you're wasting your time here. You're the people that you're learning from are making $35,000 a year. How are they going to teach you to become a multimillionaire? And I said, well, that actually makes some sense. I didn't understand. We don't understand these things. So I quickly was forced and dropped out of college. I left football literally in the middle of the season. We were 4-0. And I left the season. I was lost. Well, I wasn't lost, but I left a lot behind to make the sacrifice to jump into this world of network marketing and the future, and I had no idea what I was doing. I had upline that flew to Wisconsin and stayed with me and trained me. We were doing hotel presentations with 500 kids, and before you knew it, we had 3,000 downline in Wisconsin, in Chicago, Minnesota, all the surrounding states, and everything was exploding, and before you knew it, it started crumbling and crashing. Because when you don't train your team, you don't train everyone, this world of network marketing, you make a lot of money, but then your team doesn't. And then I got some of the bad experiences, and I didn't know anything about the world, and then I started hearing about pyramid scams and these different things. And long story short is I made some good money along with like 6 of my other leaders that were selected at the very beginning, but nobody took it serious. Everybody said, we're in college, we're partying, it's football celebration time. I was the only one that said, no, this is real, and I think that this can help my future. I play defensive back. So I used to have to come up and hit as a cornerback, and I was small. So I got tired of hitting 200-pound tailbacks. Yeah. And I dropped out of college, did the network marketing thing for 2 or 3 years, before that crumbled and went bankrupt and actually shut down. And I learned a lot from the experience. The sad part is I went back home to East LA, to LA, and then was lost.
You had made a bunch of money really quick, and then it's hard. It's hard to go back into the corporate world and build it slowly and build it with step by step. I know. I actually was in MLM myself when I was in my early 20s. And boom, big money, big quick, but big loss. But I tell people that the most valuable, I'm speaking to a real estate conference this afternoon, and I tell them the most valuable piece of real estate you're ever going to own is the 6 inches between your ears. right?
Right.
And you could have advanced in your college stuff and learned some stuff from there, but you did learn some things in sales and dealing
absolutely.
with people and whatnot. But so you come back into LA, and now you're like, okay, everything fell apart, everything crumbled. You have a mindset of, wow, I made a bunch of money really quick. Now what happened?
I got used to making, $15,000, $30,000 a month very quickly, and I came back there and I just kind of hung out for a few months and partied and wasted money and did what all typical 20, 21-year-olds do. Is I bought Gucci and Fendi, and before you know it, you're left with nothing. And I went back to training at the gym, making no money. I mean, personal trainers is very difficult to make money unless you're a celebrity trainer. But even then, you're working your tail off just to make that. It's not logical. So then I ended up personal training during the day. I got into real estate. I said, there's money here. I'm going to get into real estate, houses, loans. I started doing that. And then at night, I got into club promotions on the weekend. So I was super busy, a single, at that time, just working hard. I dropped out of college at 20, so I came back at 22, and I was now at that time getting ready to take on the world. 22, personal training, real estate, club promotions, and so many different things that happened. I was working so hard, a struggling actor, working on auditions in LA, waiting for those big breaks, and that's where took me into the Hollywood scene, and I did a little bit of TV stuff, a little bit of film stuff, met some people, and the story it's so wide, but I ended up getting to the point where I crashed my vehicle. I crashed a car, hit someone, running low on money, bills are late, cell phone's gonna get cut off, mom needs help. And someone approached me one day and said, Abe, I see you're doing all of this, and yet you're still struggling. I can show you how to make a lot more money in a weekend's time than what you're doing in 5, 6, 7, 8 months. And the truth is, at the beginning, I said, no, thank you. I said, no, I don't need it. I didn't need it that bad. I was getting by, but going from $20,000 a month to $2,000 a month, it just a big shock.
Yeah.
And I kept doing that for another 6 months until I was approached again and again. And then finally,
were these guys you met in the Hollywood scene, or just being in the wrong clubs at the wrong time with the wrong guys?
You never know who you're gonna meet. You could be at the gas station, you could be at a ball game, you could be at the gym, you could be at a club. You don't know who you're meeting. And I met people that didn't even reveal themselves for years down the line. And eventually someone approached me and said that they would help me they called it help. They would help me. And I ended up saying yes after 3 different times that they approached me about it. And I said, well, what do I got to do? I'm not a hitman. I'm not fighting. I'm not killing. I'm not carrying guns. I'm not doing any of these things. What do I need to do? You need to drive. I was like, I'm a driver. Okay, fine. I'll drive, drop this off here, go hang out for a few days, and we pay you. I eventually did that, and it was successful. And made again, $20,000 over 4 or 5 days. And the stupidity as kids, and now we're so focused on our youth, on everything that you're doing and that we're doing, is that our mindset and our mentality of our youth we're taught to have a poor mentality. We're taught to be consumers. We're taught to not think at all. And the first thing that I did was I realized how brainwashed and manipulated the first thing I did was I went to go put a down payment on a BMW, get a Rolex, and have some shoes, some Louis shoes, Gucci, and then I was left with like $700.
So you have to go do it again.
So I had to go do it again just to keep up the $1,000 payment on the car and everything else. And you get caught in this cycle. And at the time, obviously, I'm not thinking. I'm just saying, well, when am I get paid again? I got to go do it again. I got to do it again. And in my brain, this is no justification for anything. And this is where we're getting into our thought process and our mindset, is that to me, I'm just making money. I'm not aware of who I'm affecting. I'm not aware of the things that are being done in other cities and states and countries and anything. We're not able to think that thoroughly as a youth until we are connected to the Lord. God gives us visions. God gives us the ability to see things when we're not clear, and I was not clear. So I did that for a few years until the DEA, came down and got me, and I was arrested in the state of Oklahoma. And it's a lot of discussion points, but I ended up getting busted in the state of Oklahoma, and they wanted to give me a 50-year sentence at the beginning.
Wow.
They wanted to make an example of this kid from Hollywood driving through their state who thinks he's cool, thinks he's a Hollywood actor. I had headshots. I remember in the car, I had headshots and my laptop, and I was working on audition scripts, and
Oh, wow.
So, I ended up doing all of that until I got busted.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow. So how did that feel? You're driving, they come in behind you, and you realize the music just stopped.
I was coming from the East Coast, driving the whole highway back to the West Coast, and I'm going through the state of Oklahoma on the turnpike, and I remember turning down the turnpike, and I remember my lights, it was the middle of 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, and I remember I saw headlights just all of a sudden flash on, and cars came out of the trees.
Oh, wow. So they were tracking you. They knew it was you.
Cars came out of the trees, and then a bunch of black SUVs swarmed. And we're talking about like in 2 to 3 minutes of time. I was just like, my life just went. Wow. Yeah, I'm singing along to the music, and this is where I get into the world, and I'm singing along to the music, and the music is teaching me the game of cocaine. It's teaching me the game of gangs and violence and drugs and parties in Vegas and Miami, and like we're just singing along. But what we don't realize as our youth is that our words mean something. Our words are powerful. God gives us the ability to come through with that. And at the end of the day, as we speak good or bad, those things come to light in our life. Mm-hmm. And I realized that in the cell, that everything that I was singing is what I ended up living. And, life just flashed before your eyes, and you're seeing different things. And I remember coming through, and the DEA swarmed me and took me out of the vehicle and
took you to prison
and took me to jail that night. It's a whole long story, but I got, yeah.
You're living this grandiose life. And but
not even, because I was undercover. You're all of a sudden making all this money, and like all you do is buy cars and fancy stuff, and then you're partying, and then
back at square one.
Yeah. So
very unfulfilling.
Very right. Self-gratification for minutes, and it's horrible.
Yeah. So looking back, what I want to do first is maybe identify some of the we don't like to should on ourselves, shoulda, coulda, woulda, but we can also teach people, hey, these were the red flags I should have looked for. If I would have taken this road, then I wouldn't have ended up with a 35-year prison sentence, right?
Right.
So were there times along the way, even after you had just done it 2 or 3 times, you were like, okay, you know what, I should stop now and just go back to a regular life, so to speak, or what? What was that process?
As we get into that world, each time something happens and we're stressed, we're driving down the highway and we see a cop, and all of a sudden we have these emotions and feelings of worry, and oh no, they're gonna see me, or what if they're there to get me, and we don't know these things. So along the way, I saw a lot of that, and I started to just think, man, I'm not sure I should be doing this. I need to actually stop.
Yeah.
But in my brain, I was like, well, then I need to make more money and save it. I need to make a lot of money and save it. So I need bigger jobs and faster jobs, and then I can get out. But it doesn't work like that. Yeah. And we don't know these things. We don't know these things at the beginning of the journey. And there was a lot of red flags along the way, but, money and temptation takes over your mind, your heart, your soul. The root of all evil is money. There's so many different sayings. Money can be a huge problem, or it can be a huge blessing. It just depends on how we use it. And we learned that money just amplifies who you really are.
Exactly.
And at that time, the person that I was not a very good, loving, godly, moral person. And so all I thought about was making money, partying, and spending it on girls. So it wasn't anything productive. And that's what I learned.
This is how the adversary pulls us down. There's just a little bit of a shiny thing over here, and then we get sucked into it, and it's very unfulfilling. Whether it's addictions to drugs, addictions to pornography, or cheating on your wife. All of these things are they're temptatious. They're incredibly unfulfilling from a soul standpoint. And because of that, because they're unfulfilling, you actually get drawn into more and more and more that draws us down this dark and dangerous road. And one thing I teach as well is the importance of understanding the true ripple effect of our actions, of every word that we say, every action. We ask ourselves, well, why did they give you a 35-year prison sentence? Because of the ripple effect of your actions was negatively affecting countless lives, right? With the cocaine addictions and everything else that's involved there. And so I encourage people to take a look at their actions every day, even if you're not trafficking a child, even if you're not trafficking drugs, even any of these things, whatever it is, we have to, all of us, look in the mirror and say, okay, what are the real ripple effects of how I treated that person at Starbucks today, or how I spoke to my son today before he went to school, or how I showed up at work with my employees or whatever else. Are my words and actions something that is uplifting humanity, or is it creating harm? And this is what happened to me, 10 years ago. I'm not ashamed to admit this. I wasn't Paul Hutchinson. I was Paul effing Hutchinson, right? I had a basketball court in my basement. I had massive parties, and I had a healing ceremony that completely changed me, because I was able to feel in every cell of my body the pain that the families felt of some guy who came to my party and cheated on his wife or whatever else. And I thought, you know what? No, I need to be, everything that I do is affecting humanity in some way. And I need to be accountable to that, and align myself with God, align myself with true principles that are going to spread positivity throughout the world. And so, through the years in prison, what kind of emotions in terms of understanding that ripple effect?
Well, that's where my whole life just changed, and for the better. I tell people now that, the prison experience was the best experience of my life. And a lot of people will say, well, it's the worst. And sure, it was difficult. It was challenging. It was scary. But when I went into prison, I remember the first day I went in, I got thrown into a population where, you got 80 guys in there, and I walk in by myself with my sandals, my orange jumpsuit, a pillow, and your blanket, and then your cell's up there, and you got to walk through 80 guys or 100 guys, and the first thing they tell you is, all right, go shower. And I don't want to shower. I don't want to take my clothes off in front of all these guys. And, your brain and your mind start playing with you. Now you all right, now I got to protect myself. Now I got to fight. Now your brain starts playing with you, your mindset. And I went through a very difficult time at the beginning. The truth is, I thought I paid my attorney a lot of money to end up getting a judicial review, where as a first-time offender, no priors, I was told that I would get a 1-year judicial review, and if everything was good, I stayed out of problems, I did the different classes or work programs, I potentially could be let out early. You only get that when you're a first-time offender. Well, at 6 months in, I get a letter from my attorney saying that you're not getting that. The DA denied it. And that's when my world collapsed. I thought I would be in and out in a year. The truth is, I didn't have much rebuilding in those 6 months. I was just keeping myself busy so I can hurry up and get out. But when that happened, everything shattered. My heart, my mind, my soul. I cried, depressed. I called my mom. I said, Mom, they're not letting me out. I have this 35-year prison sentence. They're saying 10 years in, I might end up doing that whole 10. I don't know what's going to happen, Mom. And my mom said, son, God will never put you in a position that you can't handle. You cannot lose your faith. And this is where my whole transformation started to happen. My mom said, get on your hands and knees and ask God to give you a second chance. But more than that, you have to make a sacrifice for the Lord in prison now. I said, Mom, how am I going to make a sacrifice in prison? And she says, you need to fast. And I'm like, what does that even mean? And she's like, fast, you're not going to eat. You have to make a sacrifice for the Lord. He's busy right now saving the world. So you disobeyed, you committed the crime, you did the wrong actions, do your time, but now it's time to repent and show the Lord that you really mean what you're talking about, right? Because we all pray to God when we're in trouble, but we're not there when we should always be there. When things are good, be grateful for every moment that we breathe, light that we see, being able to bathe. Those are blessings. So when that happened, I ended up, that night I got on my hands and knees, I started to pray, and I fasted that night, that whole day. At midnight, I'd have a half a piece of bread and like a half a cup of coffee. And I did that for 40 straight days.
Wow.
And I went from 185 pounds to 150 pounds. And of course, I lost a lot of weight. And you would think that I was weak, but the truth is I was only stronger in every single aspect. Yes, the first week was difficult, physically and psychologically, but my prayers became so deep and so connected. I was truly in a conscious state of mind, something that people are not going to understand. But when we go through this fasting stage, we cleanse ourselves, our body, of the toxins, the food, the garbage, the music, the films, the TVs. All of our brain is just like our stomach. Everything we put into here takes us into a thought process. So when my brain was wiped clean, it was a new programming. I was set on a whole new stage of programming and thought process and a conscious state. So when I started to pray, the Lord and I had a direct conversation. And all I could say is, Lord, I made mistakes. Absolutely. I'm sorry. I apologize. I don't know what else to do, but I promise that if you give me a second chance, I will tell the world that it was you that gave me a second chance, and I'm here as your soldier and your warrior. I'm here to live for you. Please lead the way. Those were my prayers every morning, every night. And that's what I did. And I started to have visions. I started to see as in our communication. And the first thing that he told me, and I remember playing spades in prison, I said, you guys, the Lord was speaking to me last night, and he has a message for all of us to not lose our faith, forever faith. And I remember one of the guys, we were playing spades, and he was like crying. He was only like 3 weeks away from getting out. And we're like, why are you crying? He's like, man, I'm getting out. I don't know what to do. I don't have a job. I don't have job skills. I have a wife. I have kids. How am I going to pay for anything? It's easier for them to stay in prison. They would rather stay there. So when that happened, I had said, God loves you. This is the message that he has given me to give to you, and that's forever faith. Put God first, you will be fine. And Forever Faith started from a prison cell, and I started to design clothing. I mean, there's so much to this story. It's that's why we wrote a book, and we're going to do the movie and everything. And when that ended up happening, I started to design the clothing with the message, and at that time it was good versus evil. I mean, I started it off with like crosses and skulls and good beating evil, and I got into this whole creative stage. But I did that for the next 3.5, 4 years. I sent an envelope with the trademark saying poor man's copyright trademark. I sent it home. This is proof of concept, everything. And I said, Mom, save this. This is going to take us, into success, and we're going to change the world. And I started to do that. I started working on the business. And when God had given me these visions, I would write them out every single day. And everything was create a movement to inspire the world, motivate the world, but more importantly, educate the world for the truth. Because as I stated, when I was driving, the music that we were listening to was programming us subconsciously. Everything that we do is an influence. Yep. Everything. So us hanging out, if we hang out enough, we're going to catch each other's habits, good or bad. Yeah. I want to hang out with you for good habits, of course. But everyone's living in a state of poverty. they make a little bit of money and they want to go buy a pair of Jordans, and then they don't have money to pay their phone bill or have food because they have a poverty mindset. So when I started to realize this, God had given me visions for the next 100 years. I had already seen the future and everything that we're doing, and it was all written out. Clothing, book, supplement, it's all influence. Jim Rohn says, leadership is simply influence, and what we do with it will impact the world.
Well, that is an awesome story.
Thank you.
So forever faith, not ever losing that faith is really what it's about, right?
Yeah, forever. What other word is stronger?
Yeah. So what is faith to you? Define faith for me.
Well, as we break it down, as we've been taught, because everything that we do in life comes from some form of education, influence, teachings, indoctrinate, whatever it is, it's a form of information. And we're taught that faith is seeing those things that are not visible and not in front of you. That makes sense to me because I was in prison in a cell by myself, speaking to the Lord without anyone around. And that was faith, believing that I truly was connected from a spiritual, conscious state of mind. And I get real deep into some of these things because we talk about praying, we talk about giving thanks and praise, and so much of the world is talk, and I say that respectfully, but so much of the world is talk, and many people don't follow through with what they're talking about because they just casually talk about doing things. And when we pray, we can't just casually thank you, Lord, for the blessings today. Like, it has to be a conscious state of connection, truly engaged in understanding our relationship with the Lord and it's not about success. No, it's about the communication part, right? Having that relationship as many people state. There's a lot of things I agree with and there's a lot of things I disagree with, but it's only because of my personal experiences at the end of the day. And faith is truly living out your purpose, knowing that God has something there for you without you knowing it, because you don't know it. So we walk by faith, we act by faith, believing is that, so.
I have a story I've told many, many times on the undercover rescue missions, how many of the times we weren't following logic and protocol. We were being led.
Right.
And, I believe firmly that fear and faith cannot exist in the same person at the same time. And in a way, it's because they're almost the same power. People who believe that bad things will happen to them actually attract that to them. And people who believe that good things will happen attract that to them. And there's a scripture in the New Testament that says, ask in faith, nothing wavering. Now there's the key right there. I believe that faith is one of the most powerful forces in the universe, second only to unconditional love, right? Faith is it's a universal power, and it's simply this: it's the unwavering conviction that with God's divine help, what I want to have happen will happen, right? But the problem is that most people don't know if what they want is in line with what God wants. Should I marry this woman? Should I start this new job? Should I move to this new city? And I really think that a lot of things, God says, you're the director. If you want to marry, if you want to, But when it came to these kids, when we were doing the rescue missions, I believe that God looks down and says, an 8-year-old being raped, says, no way. If I've got good people willing to do something, I'm going to pave the way. So it was easy for me to have unwavering conviction, unwavering faith that was going to happen, that we were going to find them. Because anything outside of that goes against the virtuous God that I know and understand, right? And in terms of moving forward and creating the world that we want to create, and if our wants and desires are in line with the uplifting of humanity, of making the world a better place, then it's easy to tune in to that unwavering conviction, that unwavering faith, because you know that you're in harmony, you're in resonance with God's will.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with that. Yeah.
And that's what you've done. So here, let's talk about, you've gone you've served your time.
Yes. I served my physical time. I'm still on paper probation.
Yeah. But as long as you're not doing any drug runs, I think you're going to be good.
Right. Yeah.
So now you made some promises. You made some covenants while you were in prison. You said, God, help me through this. I'm going to dedicate my life to you.
Yes.
I'm going to make the world a better place.
Yes.
And so talk to me about your journey of creating light and truth and healing since then.
Well, I realized this from prison is that Forever Faith was simply a message. It was a message that I needed, that we need, that the world needs to hear, that the world needs to have. God has put that for the world, as you said, unwavering faith. And a lot of us have so much fear and chaos because of the programming in our system and in our world. So, my mission was to spread the gospel, was to spread the message, forever faith, right? And at the end of the day, there's so many people in the world. I don't have the control and the ability to do every single one. So we came up with apparel, everyone has to wear clothing, and that's how we started. And that started very small with a couple shirts, and now we're outfitting school programs, high schools, universities, clubs with 1,000 kids, and they're wearing the Forever Faith brand. They're not wearing the other big brands in the world. They're wearing Forever Faith mindset of champions. And, that was how we started. And we realized that it's a message, it's a mission. After we started that, I finished my book. My book tells the story of how we started the business from prison to starting the business and moving on. We moved into supplements, nutritional supplements. It's the same thing, Forever Faith mindset of champions nutrition. We're now doing music. I had to, in that music, this was all written in prison, by the way. So everything was on a to-do list from prison during my prayer time with the Lord. And our music is simply to influence. Everything is influence. Our music is simply to influence the youth, and we have to make it cool. How do we attract and get the attention of the kids when they're already being pulled into a certain direction of evil, of bad? Mm-hmm. And that's what they've been programmed to see. If we come to them with a Bible and we sit there, and I'll share this story. When I was in prison, there were pastors that would come into the jail, the prisons. They would come in, and there'd be 80 guys there, and they would stand in the front of the prison or our pod, and they would say, "Hello, does anyone want to read the Bible today?" They were ignored. Nobody even responded. I felt horrible. I said, "Man, you guys are mean." And so I realized that. And then there was another pastor who came in, Pastor Hellstrom. I write about him, Pastor John Hellstrom. He literally walked up to my bed, grabbed my sheets, pulled them off of me, and said, "Young man, we're gonna talk today. Come on over here. Let's talk." And he would incorporate the Bible and leadership and just being a human being. And he said, "I care for you, young man. Let's talk." And we all respected him. We all got out of our beds, and we wanted to be there with him. So our youth we're not going to get the attention of our youth if we don't show them that we care. We have to show them that we care. And Jim Rohn says it, people don't care how much you know until you know how much they care. So I had all these teachings in me before prison. I just didn't know I how to utilize them. So everything in network marketing was preparing me for the future. It really was. And so with the clothing, the music has to be cool. It has to be attractive. It has to have beat to hip hop, or that's the dominating music in the world. Every single sporting event plays that music, but it's with purpose. It's with vocabulary and language that's uplifting in the right direction, psychologically, spiritually. It's still God. But God is cool. God has no limits. It doesn't make any sense to put limits on him. So we've created a movement of everything that we're doing. And, at the end of the day, everything that we're doing, God is leading the way. I mean, I've done this by myself with crayons and napkins from prison. That was the business plan, was on napkins and crayons. And we're moving forward. We've done so much. It's really only the beginning. I've been fortunate to connect with Telemundo and CNN and all of these networks and platforms like yours. And it's such a blessing to do this, because I know that someone's going to hear the message. Someone's going to see this, and they're going to say, "Hey, I want to be involved. Hey, let's buy the clothing for the kids. Hey, let's do that. You know, people live without purpose. They live without understanding, and most people are singing songs or putting on clothes, and they have no meaning for what they're doing. So that's where we come in. We feel that, and I saw this, that this is a global brand all over the world, and I'll leave the planet, but the message of God will still be here, and it'll continue on for generations.
So what is MOC?
MOC.
MOC.
Mindset of Champions.
Awesome.
Mindset of Champions.
So what is that mindset?
Well, simple, and I say it in my video. When we put God first and ourselves second, that's the mindset of champions, and we cannot lose. And that goes into every aspect of life: sports, business, family, culture. I mean, look at it as a father. If us as fathers are not in a position of strength financially, mentally, socially, spiritually, how can we help our wives or help our children? How can we lead a family, lead an organization? And this is where I say people talk to talk, and I don't mean to offend anyone ever, but if you're not in a strong position, how can you help other people? You just can't. And I was that person saying, I want to help everyone, but I couldn't even pay my cell phone bill. And there's so many people that want to help in events and charity, but behind closed doors, like they can't even put gas in their car. So we're talking about real life stuff, and I've been on both spectrums. So we're focused on growing our business. I can't save the world yet. We're not in that kind of a strong financial position, but we're doing our jobs. I'm in prisons every city, state, and country I go to. We're preaching to the kids, inspiring the kids, motivating, educating them, preparing them for the future. And I talk to them very real about the mistakes that I've made and how they're going to avoid them, and they're going to have an incredible future ahead of them. So that's Mindset of Champions. That's MOC. And in Spanish, it's Mente de Campeones. I have it here in Spanish.
Oh, cool.
MDC for Spanish. So,
fantastic. You speak Spanish?
Yes, I'm Cuban Mexican. So yes, I speak fluent Spanish. Everything I do is in English and Spanish. Clothing is in English and Spanish. My book is in English and Spanish.
Yep, my book's coming out in Spanish as well.
In Spanish, of course.
We've got some great connections in Latin America that we can get you on with as well.
Oh,
so there's some
a blessing.
big wins there.
Yeah,
love your
amen.
energy. I love your message to the world.
Well, it's
Super
exactly
powerful.
what you're doing. It's what you're doing. I mean, when I obviously saw the movie and saw your story, I said, he's real. He's actually out there fighting and struggling. And I know how much, I know you cried so much. I'm getting ready to cry now, but like, I know the pain and the struggle of what it takes to help people.
Yeah.
And we want to do it so bad that it becomes a challenge. It's
unfortunate that we can't help them all. You know, we try with the best of our might to create the solutions, but in the end, free will is something that God is not going to take away. And sadly, that free will keeps people stuck many times. All we can do is show them the way. We can say, hey, you know what? I've been there, and that doesn't work, but this does. And and hopefully they can see that light.
Amen.
And see that truth and live in a way where they're not creating harm to others and themselves.
Yep.
And so I love your story. I love how you did not allow those challenges of your childhood to stop you from going into sports, and then didn't allow the challenges of your early 20s to dictate the rest of your life. You instead were able to find God and find that truth, find that faith.
Right.
How are people able to find you? What's your website? How can they find your book?
Yeah, I mean, you can go to foreverfaith.com. It's really simple, foreverfaith.com. Google Forever Faith or Abe Cruz, and that will take all social media platforms at The Real Abe Cruz. Forever Faith, that's the simplest way because it's all attached. And you can buy my book on my website. Don't go to the other additional platforms. You can go direct to foreverfaith.com. I've done everything as an entrepreneur. We have factories in Colombia, Mexico, Pakistan. We produce our clothing direct from factories. I'm not working with middlemen, third parties. I flew to every single country, established relationships with the factories, including my book. So we produced the book ourselves. I didn't have third and fourth party middlemen doing it. It's a lot of work. So I always ask people to support us directly because it only helps us in our mission and what we're doing with the kids.
Excellent.
Yes.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Abe, I'm super grateful for you spending time today with our audience. I know that there's a lot of tidbits of information that they can use to make their lives a better life. Right. I think that the one big takeaway is God first, and holding on to that faith, no matter where life takes us, no matter where other people's choices or even our choices take us into the dark paths. We can always find that light again. We can always find that healing. We can always find that space of truth and peace in our life. So thank you. And thank you for joining us today on the Liberating Humanity podcast. Please share this, click the like button below, and share this with your friends and family and other people. These are messages of inspiration, of love, of hope, of truth, of what we need to do together to liberate humanity. Thank you.